A scam is when people take something from others that belongs to the others by pretense or fraud or deception. There's a story by Jamie Satterfield, a noted journalist in Tennessee, about in the Chattanooga Times-Free Press this morning, about a scam in Sevierville, in Sevier County, where a woman named Deborah K. Catlett and 4 others tried to scam the Dollywood Foundation that was gracious enough to give away thousands of dollars, millions of dollars to residents who had been burned out in the Great Conflagration. So there are 5 people under indictment, and the story that Jamie tells in the TFP today tells about Ms. Catlett, who had worked as a photographer, the story says, for real estate publications in Sevier County and had a database of rental cabins and with addresses and owners' names. And that was used, according to charges, that let these scammers place claims for compensation. The scammers used the forged leases. They had written leases and forged them to obtain temporary driver's licenses with those corresponding addresses through the Department of Safety and Homeland Security. And then the indictment alleges the scammers presented the temporary driver's licenses, licenses and leases to the My People Fund as proof that they had been displaced in the fire. So here they're using the state and state pretenses and false statements to state entities to create a pretense, a scam that lets them collect money. Well, and it's very dangerous to do that, and that people think that they can get away with engaging in fraud by having state IDs that are false is simply beyond belief. And we find problems like that also turned around, that the state itself and state actors are doing that against us, right? They have a limit against them, and that is the Constitution. The Constitution limits their power and enlarges and protects the rights of the people, and also the privileges that the people have vis-a-vis the state. They're guaranteed under the Constitution, rights and privileges both of the people. And yet the state often turns it around and makes claims against the people, taking from them by subterfuge and deception what is theirs. And there's a court case from 2001, I believe it is, the state of Chattanooga versus Davis, that suggests how that's being done. But before I get to that, I want to assure you that Chattanooga Police Department employees who are employees of the executive branch of city government have a code of ethics rules that require numerous things in your favor. And I want to tell you about what these things are, because it's reassuring to hear that there cannot be, by the ethics rules of the department, there cannot be any kind of scam against you. There cannot be any kind of deception under the pretense of the law against you, my listener, and your family and your business. There is a strict respect required in the ethics rules that are, I think, from 2012, written by and signed by former Chief of Police Fred Fletcher. It's a very interesting document that I obtained as part of an open records request, and I'm mining that file that the department was good enough to give to me some months ago, and I don't want that, with that good work of gathering all that information together, to go to waste. And so I want to let you know that every officer in Chattanooga Police Department, of which there are 500, there is an army of 500. It's kind of a standing army, not pretendedly civilian, but a military organization serving Mayor Andy Burke, that has a fairly strict rule of ethics, a law, a code of ethics. And this is pursuant to that department's CALEA approval. And the date of it is April 29, 2011. I've got the year on 2011. So this is a 6-year-old policy that is in effect today across the streets and across the neighborhoods of the corporation of Chattanooga. And I'd say that it's encouraging to read it. It's encouraging to read it. And what we have to well, the reason I went into this last night at the Panera Bread store in off of Gunbarrel Road, where I was waiting for a son to be finished with a church event. I said, I actually have a computer, my computer with me, and I have about 90 minutes to kill. It's very strange for David Tulis ever to have time to kill. It just doesn't happen that he has that. And so I thought, this is a luxury that's rare to me. And so I'm going to go into my police file that is on my Google Drive and look up ethics, because I had asked myself about the firing of Officer David Campbell, who had used an obscenity that starts with an M and has an F in the middle of it somewhere. Among all those dashes, there's the letter F. Okay, you know what I'm talking about. And so was David Campbell fired for the use of that word? The answer is no. The answer is no. As far as I know, he was fired for speeding at 115 miles an hour on city streets for no purpose. That was one of the main reasons he was fired. And also for the abuse of handsome Melvin, a Christian man who happens to be black, right? He was the classic walking while black case in Chattanooga that was broken by me, David Tulis, your host, thanks to a listener of this station who thought I could help him. He contacted me because he thought that I could help him and that I would be willing to help him. And guess what? Within an hour of his call to me, when I realized that I had met him once, he had been working at the Einstein Brothers Bagel here in Hickson, and he that's how he knew me. And I remembered exactly who he was, and he called me. And within the hour, I was having a meeting with him about his experience. And I said, my first line of action was, you need to write right now. You need to write an affidavit about what happened. And so that's what you always want to get the facts straight, right? So that's how I began to help him by saying, you need to write an affidavit. Let me ask you all the questions that will help you create that document. Well, and the word MF was used in that arrest. Okay, sorry, it was the word with those two letters in it in some form was used against him in public, right? In public by an employee of the city government, serving Mayor Andy Burke last year. This was last year. Now, the code of ethics is I'd say that Chief Fletcher did a very good job on it. And here's the first paragraph. It says, as a law enforcement officer, my fundamental duty is to serve mankind, to safeguard lives and property. Okay, notice that. Safeguard property. Of course, property would be your freedom of movement, your freedom of possession. To protect the innocent against deception, the weak against oppression or intimidation, and the peaceful against violence or disorder. I don't see anything that I would object to there. And to respect the constitutional rights of all men. This is very good. This is very good. Mayor Burke, you've done an excellent job to have this in the rule of ethics for city police officers. And to respect the constitutional rights of all men to liberty, equality, and justice. This is language, let's say, this is language from Mayor Andy Burke, to his credit, that his officers in his department, in city government, have to honor this rule. That is just one sentence of a document that runs 2 pages. I will be exemplary in obeying the laws of the land and the regulations of my department. Of course, they're not quite the same thing. The laws of the land are common law, and they are constitutional law. Statutory law is not law of the land; it's law of the state. It's a different law. But never mind. He says the mayor goes on to have the officer swear the following: I will never act officiously or permit, in other words, with a false pretense, or permit personal feelings, prejudices, animosities, or friendships to influence my decisions, with no compromise for crime and with relentless prosecution of the criminal, comma, I will enforce the law courteously. All right, courteously. That means no S, no D, no GD, no abuse of the Lord's name. No officer in Chattanooga should ever use the term GD, because only God has a power to damn. And no man can invoke God's name to say something is damned and that God damns it unless God actually has done that. And that's done only in the Bible, right? Only in the Bible does God damn certain things. And no person can say GD, because what that is, it's an abuse. It's an abuse of God's name, which is a violation of the third commandment. The third commandment forbids the abuse of any of God's names, titles, or attributes. And so GD is forbidden here. And the officer says, he swears, I will enforce the law courteously. Okay, there you go. Courtesy always requires respect of the deity, as we would hear in our founders' documents. The deity, that is to say, God, and appropriately, without fear or favor, malice or ill will. Again, notice there's a local economy requirement for the officer. He has to have a local economy, humane and courteous perspective. This is David Tulis, by the way. I do thank you for joining me here at Nooga Radio. We'll be talking in a minute with Mickey Bonney, a great artist here in town. But notice that, without fear or favor, malice or ill will, never employing unnecessary force or violence, and never accepting gratuity. So notice, unnecessary force or violence are forbidden. They are simply forbidden. So what is necessary, of course, that is open to debate. He says, the officer says, according to Mayor Burke's dictum in 2011, I recognize the badge of my official of my official, maybe a word missing there, as a symbol of public faith, and I accept it as a public trust to be held so long as I am true to the ethics of the police service. Now, there, I question that. That's sort of saying something parallel to what you're saying about upholding the Constitution. You know, there is no oath to the police service. There's no such thing as police service and obeying that. Okay, that doesn't make any sense. You can't. You know, there is no ethics of police service. You know, the ethic is God. The ethic is the Constitution, and the ethic would be if you're enforcing statute. Okay, and you can't go beyond statute, and you can't impose lawless laws on people. There is more on this canon of ethics. It goes on to say, employees shall be courteous and shall recognize their responsibilities as public employees, and be particularly attentive to citizens keeping proper assistance or information, or who desire to register complaints or give evidence. They shall accept their responsibilities to the public by being punctual. They shall regard their office as a public trust. Now, I take, you say, oh, that's just jibber jabber. That's just officious jibber jabber. No, public trust means that that person represents the law. He represents the government, right? And he represents, you know, the state. The state and the government are separate things. In my conception, the state is a poetical, sort of religious corporation behind the government. But both of those, let's just for this purpose here, say that they're, you know, more or less the same thing. The public trust is to say that the state and the government are there to serve the people, not to lord it over the people, not to control the people where the people have not granted that authority. Okay. Now, again, that I'm bringing up here the slaying Monday by a THP officer in Hickson, a man who was clearly not in commerce. Well, that's not clear. He wasn't in commerce, but he was a private traveler on the road. The probable cause was that he did not have a tag on his car. Again, implying he was a private user of the road, not a public user. Is that a crime? Well, you know, the officer was trained out of Nashville to think that is a crime to be a private user. The ethics rules of Andy Burke and his former chief Fred Fletcher go on to say, employees shall administer the law and render service in a just, impartial, and reasonable manner. Again, that's not just officious jibber jabber. I think that means something. Okay, that is to mean something, and you, my listener, should hold to account the employees of city government of Chattanooga, the municipal corporation. Hold them to account on these and like points. Employees shall be true to their obligation as custodians of public property, and not waste resources, right? They shall add to their effectiveness by diligent study and sincere attention to self-improvement. This is kind of getting personal here. They shall welcome an opportunity to disseminate practical and useful information relating to matters of the public's safety and welfare. Again, now I'm bringing up this question about the Miranda readings in transportation and traffic stops across Hamilton County. As far as I know for sure in Chattanooga, those arrested are not read their Miranda rights. All right, Miranda is the 1964 decision, Arizona versus Miranda, and Miranda was found to have had his rights violated because he was not warned about speaking to the officer. You know, under Miranda, you have a right to say absolutely nothing and to demand to have nothing done or said or tested about you, absent your attorney. Right? That's your right under Miranda. Why are people who are arrested by the city routinely not read their Miranda rights? And I take the Coonrod, the Coonrod arrest recently the city councilwoman being arrested by Officer Tiffany Lentz in downtown. The man driving in the car behind the wheel, a state licensee didn't have his license with him. Anthony Gladden. Employees shall never act officiously or permit personal feelings, prejudices, animosities, or friendship to influence their official decision. Now, there's a section in this ethics rules for Chattanooga Police Department about profiling. Profiling is what's called a useful tool to assist law enforcement, but there's an illegal kind of profiling forbidden in Chattanooga, forbidden by Mayor Andy Burke and his executive branch department, and that would be selection of individuals, as it's called, right? Selection of individuals based on race, ethnic background, gender, sexual orientation, religion, economic status, age, cultural group. Well, this clearly is abused because black men in Chattanooga, including Anthony Byrd, our city council member, new city council member, black men in Chattanooga are routinely treated as so much trash. Anthony Byrd tells me he couldn't tell me how many times he'd been stopped traveling while black, standing around while black. And by God's grace, Anthony Byrd is a man who doesn't seem to hold resentment about that. That's just the way things are. I'm a young black man, and I've been stopped 20, 30 times. Hanson Melvin, in his late 20s, 29, family man, 3 children, has been stopped probably 30 times. And I've reported these numbers before to you, and that I've not been stopped that many times. Why is that? Why am I not stopped routinely? Is that because I wear a bow tie? Is that it? Is that because I have a Hot News Talk Radio logo on my van? Well, no, it's because if you're black and you're poor, you're going to get the bad end of policing. Policing is a form of social management. It is, sociologically speaking, it is a way of controlling common people and ignorant people and poor people and black people. It is a mechanism for social control, and the purpose of policing is to create fear. That is the purpose of it. There are some marginal benefits that are presented as the main benefit of policing. That would be a solution to crimes, detection of crimes, the sniffing out of stolen goods, and the detection of murderers and rapists, and like those are indeed very good. But that's that kind of work is not as much of the police daily logbook as you think. Okay, it's not as much as you think. So these forms of profiling are prohibited. That are bias-based. Bias-based profiling is not allowed. It's not allowed to stop someone just because he's driving a 1997 Chevrolet Caprice with big hubcaps, and he's black, and all the windows are open, and there are 3 other black men in that car. That's not. You can't stop somebody for that. And if you stop somebody for that, you better have probable cause, right? And David Tulis here asking the stupid question, right? That's what I do. David Tulis, the editor of Nooganomics.com, the website for the man who matters, live on Facebook, live on YouTube. I ask the dumb questions. I am indeed, as they say, the smartest guy with a bow tie in Chattanooga. But how did I get there? I asked the dumb questions. I asked the dumb questions. The slow man of Chattanooga. The slow man of Chattanooga. And that's why I'm not liked in some quarters. Some quarters I'm not respected and not liked. Because I cover certain topics, I'm not respected. And yet the same people respect other media platforms for not covering those very same topics. They respect the other platform for not covering them and disrespect me for covering them, such as geoengineering and solar radiation management, the big environmental story, the past 75 years, the biggest story of the environment, ignored by everybody in the media except John Wilson. John Wilson at Chattanooga.com has posted several of my reports in that direction. The use of bias-based profiling by any member of the department shall be considered equivalent to conduct unbecoming of an officer. Okay, so you got that. But my question is, what about Miranda? Where is Miranda read in traffic stops? When there's a transportation stop, why is Miranda not read? And I ask that question because of 2 cases, State versus Raspberry and State versus Garcia. A stop is an arrest, is a seizure. Okay, they're all the same thing when the blue lights are on. Here in Chattanooga, when the blue lights are on, you are under arrest, and the officer had better read you your Miranda rights. And if he's not reading them to you and saying you're only being detained and only being questioned, he's lying to you, because that's not true. That's not true. You're being arrested. You're under arrest. Ask him if you're under arrest. He can lie to you. He can lie to you all he wants. You cannot lie to him under the state false statement statute. Okay, don't lie to the officer. You can't. It's a crime to do it. But he can lie to you all he wants, and that's what's happening every day here in Chattanooga. And so I ask about these ethics rules, and I would say that the ethics rules need to be reminded, and it can't be biennial as it says in this rule. It has to be, I'd say, every week, not twice, once every 2 years, but every week. How about that? David Tulis, Nooga Radio.
The Tennessee Valley